Airbnb properties will cash flow like crazy if you're buying in the right market, the right property type, and specifically on the right type of creative financing terms. And one of the easiest ways to ensure that you're maximizing the cash flow on your short-term rentals is by reducing the interest rate and the monthly payments. And the way that we typically do this is with what's called creative financing. So we've helped over 300 clients close on creative finance deals over the past few years. And I put together a breakdown in the next 30 minutes showing subject to financing, seller financing, why this is beneficial for the buyer, why the seller is okay and sometimes even needs to do this. So strap in, check out this video. And if you don't already follow the channel, please give us a like and subscribe. In our description, we also have a link if you'd like to work directly with the team. We help hundreds of people find and buy cash flowing, tax saving Airbnbs every single year. So if you want our help doing exactly what we break down in this video, please just click the link. For now, enjoy this breakdown. What I'll do in this video is I'll just quickly run through a Proforma example so you can kind of see how everything is laid out and what everything looks like on this page here. So when you take a look at a Proforma, what's really important just in your first pass kind of going over these, you have the basic like purchase price and offer price mechanics. There's a down payment. So I'll go through the various types of deal types. The conventional ones is the only one I don't have listed in my iPad presentation. So I'll just quickly run through one of these since it's pretty simple. You have a purchase price and a down payment amount. You have an interest rate, so whatever the conventional rate is right now, which spits out a monthly payment for you. And that's just going to be your mortgage payment for principal and interest. Over here, we've got the tax and insurance. And then towards the bottom of the pro forma here, we've got the total principal and interest and then tax insurance, which is called PITI. So if you ever want to see a deal's total monthly payments, you're going to see it all listed right here. In this section right here, I have the breakdown for closing costs. It's going to be different based on the deal type. I'll do a more nuanced example of each individual deal type and the differences between typical closing costs, whether they're on the high end, whether they're on the low end, and all the nuance between them. But this is just a general overview because most of these pro formas have, the rest of these elements are pretty identical outside of the closing costs. There's a section right here, which is dedicated to post-closing enhancements. So what you'll see towards the bottom right-hand corner of this doc, when I scroll all the way down here, I think I got to pull this thing all the way up. What you'll see down here in the corner is going to be the total sum of whatever I've got highlighted right here. That's basically the total estimate for the post-close enhancements that you're going to want to make on the home once you're live with the property, once you've closed on the property and you're getting it live. So I talk a lot about those in the videos. And then down here towards this section, we've got an income breakdown, which namely is just predicated on the average nightly rate and the occupancy rate. So you can get a feel for what the annual income should be, which is also highlighted in the top set of rows up here. So there's gross annual cash flow that is a product of revenue minus the expenses. We come into this column over here. It's just basically highlighting all the monthly expenses. So I talked about the tax and insurance. These are annual projections that we make down here. They're broken down into monthly in this category up here. And then the team does a pretty good job of making a final estimate for, based on the quality of the home, we recalibrate this after we see an inspection report. But for the most part, we get these estimates pretty accurate. The co-hosting fee, again, this is a range. Most of the co-hosts that we have not exclusive relationships, but like exclusive partnerships with, if we are referring a co-host to you, they'll typically go way below the industry standard, which like industry standard is 15 to 25%. I still have co-hosts that manage my homes for 17.5, 20%, and they do great jobs, and I'm really, really happy with them. A lot of the co-hosts that I recommend over to you guys after they've served other clients or they've come highly recommended or they show up to my bi-weekly mastermind calls where I'll have anywhere from, I invite around 15 co-hosts to show up on those calls every other week. Depending upon the week, they're like 5 to 12 that show up. So if they, consistently show up, they're performing well, they're solving the problems that they have in their properties that are struggling or the listings that are struggling, I send them over to you guys as the, suggested co-host in a specific area. They charge anywhere from around 10 to 15% for the gross revenue. So we'll always model the pro forma as accurately as possible. And then your basic utilities, HOA if there is an HOA there. So that's kind of, the mechanics of what a pro forma looks like and then how to read through it. I'll do a more nuanced video for each deal type at a later date. Now, what I want to go through here is just kind of running through the different creative deal types. I've posted videos like this on YouTube, just kind of highlighting everything but I'm going to quickly run through them. So seller financing. So when you buy a home, normal process. So you don't necessarily bring 100% of the cash on your own. You get a loan from a bank, and a portion of that cash to close on the home is coming from a bank. Well, in a seller finance scenario, instead of you holding a promissory note, let's just pretend this is an image of a bank over here. They're all homes. Instead of you holding a promissory note with the bank, you would actually just hold one with the seller. So basically, if you've ever heard seller financing basically recapitulated as the seller is the bank, that's exactly what they're referring to. So in a seller finance transaction, let's use a really quick, simple example here. Let's just say you have a home that is a $1 million purchase price, okay? So let's say this seller is okay with you putting 15% down, right? So that means the day that you close, you would put $150K down on this home. Well, the remainder 85%, where is that coming from? It's basically the seller giving you a loan that you're using the proceeds of that loan to immediately pay back the seller, so no real funds have exchanged hands. It's an $850,000 promissory note, which again, a promissory note is just another way of saying a loan that you hold with another party. Well, the loan that you hold it with is the seller. So you make the monthly payments on that mortgage, that note. Instead of making the payments to a mortgage company, you're basically making the payments directly to the seller. So the loan terms are typically still amortized over 30 years with monthly payments. Oftentimes, we get a lot of seller finance notes that will negotiate with sellers where there's no monthly payments because they're actually in a very unique predicament where they don't really want a lot of today money and they want to defer all their gains for tax reasons. So very rare that we'll have a home that's owned entirely in cash and that you have just one seller finance note with them. It's typically going to be a blend of two notes, a note that they already hold, which is basically leading me into the subject to example here. And then in combination with that, a seller finance note. So let's go through subject to, which is going to be 80% of our creative deals. You're just basically taking over the seller's existing mortgage on really, really good terms. So this is technically what's called a non-qualified loan assumption. This is basically when, let's say you have a seller over here. The seller, let's say, is a husband and wife. They bought a home, and they bought this home, let's say, because this is a really common example, they bought this home in 2021. So this is a super common example of stuff that we do. They bought this home, let's say, with an FHA loan. So they somehow qualified for an FHA loan. Let's say they put like a 3.5% down payment down on the home, and they have a mortgage with whatever mortgage company or whatever bank. And let's say that interest rate for that mortgage is something really, really impressive. Let's use a crazy one. Let's say 2.85%, because we just had a client close on a home that was a subject to transaction with a 2.85% interest rate. So what's cool about this scenario, we see homes all the time that were purchased 2, 3, 4 years ago, typically 4 years ago now if it's 2021. And what we love about that home is the monthly payments. So specifically their debt. So in this scenario, their monthly payments, let's just use a crazy example. Their monthly payments right now are, let's just say for really simple math, $27.85. So it's maybe like a $650,000 home. They used an FHA loan. These are their monthly payments. It's crazy low interest rate. Well, if you were to buy that $650,000 home today with the conventional rates right now between 6.5%, 7.5%, well, your monthly payments would be something pretty terrible. I mean, with that interest rate, as high as it is right now, you might be looking at, $3,500 a month, let's say around $700 per month higher. Well, if you take a look at that Proforma that I just had on the screen and you add $700 extra, this is a bad example, but $700 extra per month. Well, what that effectively does is it wrecks $8,400, something like that, $8,400, $8,500 per year off of your cash flow. So obviously you and I both know why lower interest rates and the resulting lower monthly payments are super, super significant. So in these scenarios, a subject to transaction is basically you stating to the seller, hey, the thing I love the most about your property I love the property is great, but I love your debt. I love the fact that you have monthly payments that are so significantly lower than the monthly payments I would be making if I went out and got a conventional loan for this home right now at the current interest rate in the market. And what I want to do is I want to come up with a scenario where we can keep that promissory note, that mortgage that you have between you and your mortgage company, you and your bank, whomever it is. I want to keep those monthly payments going. So the debt is going to stay in place. But what's going to happen is I want to buy the home from you. So it's deeded over to me. I want to own it at close. And I just want to keep making the monthly payments for you. So what's cool about this approach is there's a lot of other mechanics that I talk about in a public YouTube video. But basically what it means is we got to kind of come up with a unique scenario where it's like, hey, they're taking on very, very minimal risk here. They're, still in first position with the note that they have in their name. So if the home were to get foreclosed on or something crazy, like their credit score would get tanked because technically the debt is in their name still. So what we typically tell them is, hey, I'm looking at the mechanics on how you own this home right now. You put 3.5% down, 3, 4, 5 years ago, 4 years ago. You don't really have much equity in this home. It's not like the home has gone up crazy in value in the last 4 years. You have, let's say in this scenario, they have something like $70K in equity right now. So they have, the home, they bought the home for $650, let's just pretend. It's only worth $660 right now, something like that. So they put down 35 grand. The home's gone up 10K in value, so now their equity is 45K. And let's just say they paid down the difference of 25K in principal, even though these numbers aren't accurate, right? So they have 70K in equity. Well, if they sell the home to any other buyer, right, there's going to be a conventional buyer, they get a loan. This seller might have to cover, seller's agent fees, buyer's agent fees. They have to cover closing costs. So when they walk away from this transaction at the end of the day, they're, barely maybe walking away with 40, 50 grand, which kind of sucks, right? They bought a home 3, 4 years ago. They're selling it. Kind of a wash for them. The terms really, really suck for them in that scenario. Well, what we tell these homeowners, these sellers, is basically things like, what we could do is, I see this Zillow listing. You've been trying to sell this home for a while, probably because of this very scenario. It's like you're just waiting for the market to go up. You're waiting for a better offer to come in. You're waiting for your listing to expire. Maybe you want to get rid of your seller's agent. Maybe you want to do a deal with no agents. So you save, in this scenario, maybe 30, 40 grand in commission that you would otherwise need to pay out to both agents, which is cutting into your proceeds. So what we could explore is this. Why don't we, get this listing to expire? Maybe there's a compliant way that you could end the relationship with your listing agent and just expire the listing early. You could sell this directly as a for sale by owner. So there's no commission that needs to be exchanged. So you'll get more proceeds, right? Because we're a buyer, we don't need any agents on this deal. We can just do this directly. What we'd like to do is we'll give you the purchase price you want, which is fine. But what we want to do is a crazy low down payment. So I know in that scenario, best case scenario for you is walking away with 70, K. What we'd like to do is maybe we explore giving you 60, 70, 75K. There's no commission on this. So you'll actually be taking home more in this scenario because we don't have to involve any buyer's agents or any seller's agents. And what I get to do is I get to shave off $80,000 or $8,400 per year, $700 a month roughly, in my payments. So that's kind of the mechanics and the logic behind why would a seller be open to this. It's not that people are excited to sell their homes and deed the property over to a new buyer, but keep the debt in place. There's got to be a little other incentive for them. And basically what it boils down to at the end of the day is we want to take over the responsibility of making these payments monthly. Don't worry, we're just as incentivized to make the payments. If we don't make the payments, we'll say maybe after 2 months or 3 months of missed payments, we could just deed the property back over to you. So there's a little bit of protection for you, the seller. It's heavily incentivized and in favor of the buyer, us. And what we did in exchange is we basically gave them $5,000 to $10,000 more than whatever they would walk away with in a conventional deal. So I know a lot of clients ask, why would a seller even be open to this? But now you can basically recognize, these are the favorite deals that clients do. It's just crazy low down payments, lower interest rates typically, and therefore lower monthly payments. So one of the most advantageous deal types that we'll ever do. And then finally, most of the time, there's a combination of seller financing and subject to. And what typically happens is, and I'm just going to fast forward to this and then I'll workshop a quick example for you. Subject to transactions are great because the seller has recently purchased the home, typically with something like an FHA loan. There are a lot of people who manage to still qualify for FHA loans, even if they're higher income earners. They might, do a loan application where only one spouse's income is reported, or they might have one high income earning spouse and then another spouse who maybe doesn't work full time. So like they, can still technically qualify. So it's very common that people will buy homes with FHA loans. They might live in them for a year. Sometimes they don't. They just run them as short-term rentals right out of the gate. However they acquired the home and the loan product doesn't really matter. But what's interesting is there's very low equity. Well, in a hybrid deal, because you can see on the other end of the spectrum, the seller finance ones, if it's an exclusively seller finance deal, that seller owns it all in cash. Well, what's cool about the hybrids is it's kind of somewhere in this equity range. So think about it this way. Let's say we're going to buy, just for really simple math, let's buy $1 million home, okay? So let's say this seller bought this home. I got to fandangle the math here. Let's say they bought it. So this is the purchase price. So back in the day, the seller bought it for purchase price of, let's say, $960, okay? So $960,000. And let's say they did like an FHA loan. They put 3.5% down. So their down payment was something like, let's just say for simple math, $30K, right? Roughly. Okay, so when they closed on that home, their equity position was $30K, because how did they buy the home? Well, they bought it with $960K purchase price. They put 30 down, and then their loan or their promissory note or their mortgage was $930K. So let's fast forward over to 4 years from now. Here's the new scenario. So the new purchase price, let's just say, they want to sell the home for $1 million. The down payment that we make today, to be determined, right? And the loan amount, let's just say, even though this isn't going to be 100% accurate, let's say the existing loan balance, so the remainder amount owed, let's just say for the sake of this example, let's say it's something like $800, even though that's not realistic. Nobody's paying off $130K in principal on that type of home in like 4 years. So let's say the down payment that they want today, this is what the seller wants, is $200K. Well, I have clients who would love to do that, right? It's a 20% down payment. That's amazing. But what we might want to explore is something like, hey, you know what we would rather do? We, or my client as the buyer, here's what we'd rather do. We'll do the purchase price of $1 million. So no problems there. You have that loan balance, which we want to take over and continue making payments on. It's an $800K loan balance. And what's cool about your monthly payments is they're super low. That's why we're doing this. But instead of just giving you a $200,000 down payment, we want to, let's just say for this example, split it in half. So we want to do $10K down, and we want to, 10% down at $100K down, and we want to seller finance the other $100K. So that is basically what a hybrid deal is. And there would be, interest on the seller finance note, maybe something like 3%, 4%, 5%. Brian on my team does a really good job of negotiating still very favorable interest rates, because the seller is kind of in a unique position. They're, again, kind of like that example with the subject to transaction. It's kind of hard to, find buyers that they can, get their purchase price that they want right now. Every seller kind of knows, especially right now in this market, a lot of homes are under appraising. So what would happen is if they, took this thing to market and they tried to get this $1 million purchase price, which they're probably trying to get, or they might have even gone under contract, had the home under appraise, and they were just like, dude, we bought this home for $960 4 years ago. We don't want to sell it today for $920 or $930 or $950 or $960 or $970, right around what we bought it at or less than what we bought it at. It's like they don't want to do that. So this hybrid approach kind of solves for the scenario where they're not a perfect subject to type deal. Like there's too much, because our clients, the way I want to buy deals, you want to buy deals. It's like we want to put the least amount of money down today, because the highest internal rate of return we'll get is basically our net effective tax savings, right? We want great cash flow. We want low monthly payments, and cash flow and monthly payments kind of go hand in hand. If I have lower monthly payments, lower interest, I get more cash flow. And if I put lower money down and have great cash flow, well, I have amazing cash on cash return. So we're just trying to find all the highest leverage, most important things to, me as a buyer, you as a buyer, the things that we actually want. So that is kind of a scenario where a hybrid would make sense, right? Because otherwise, if we were to just take over in that example again, purely subject to, here's what the whole thing would look like. It's like, okay, we'll give you $1 million purchase price. We'll do $200K down. So that would be the down payment. And then subject to the $800K that's remaining, we would make those monthly payments. Now, that would be a pure subject to example on this one. But what we did here is we fandangled and spun that $200K in equity. We split it apart. Think of it almost as like a deferred down payment. It's like we did, $100K today, and then we'll do that remainder $100K seller finance over like maybe a 30-year term, amortized like a normal loan would be, a normal mortgage would be. But instead of, making all those payments over 30 years, there might be something like a 10-year balloon where the remainder, debt that's owed is like accelerated and due that day, or 7 years or 5 years. And what will typically happen at that scenario is you, the buyer, would not sell the home. I don't think you ever want to sell a cash flowing asset. You'd probably just refinance it. So in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, the home might go up 15, 20, 25, 30, 35%, maybe 40% value. Like we have a lot of homes where clients of ours and I bought homes 3, 4 years ago. They've gone up like crazy. My Sarasota, Florida homes are literally going to be the homes that I refinance this year, pull a ton of equity out and fund all the deals that I do towards the end of Q3, beginning of Q4 this year, after probably the first rate cut, wait 30 days, see homes, getting listed, getting sold, going up in price, driving my values of my homes up, and then doing the refi then. So those are pretty much the mechanics. And then this final one, what I explained here for the hybrid deals is specifically they're lower medium equity. And we do a lot of stuff that's in the I'd say like this range, like 18 to 35% equity. Because basically what it allows us to do is, let's use that $1 million home example again. So we got $1 million purchase price. Let's say they have 180 to 350 grand in equity. So their equity is, let's just use the 350K, for example. So what a seller is going to come to us and say is like, well, I want my 350 grand today. It's like, got it. Well, you're not getting the $1 million purchase price that you want on these conventional deals. So your walk away net to seller proceeds is going to be way less than 350. And also, if we did this subject to, I'm not going to put 35% down on the home. Like nobody wants to do that. So you're the seller kind of in a predicament. You want your purchase price and you want your equity today. Well, it's like you can't get everything, right? So this creative approach is basically, hey, you're kind of left with only one option. You want a little bit of today money and some tomorrow money. Like this is kind of going to be the scenario that works for you. It's like you're going to have to take a trade-off. If you want all of that money today, well, you're probably only going to get a portion of it. This home might underappraise. It might only appraise for 900. So now your equity position just dropped by 100, right? So now you're left with 250K. And then after all your seller proceeds, after all your other seller expenses, the commission that you need to pay out, whatever, it's like you're left with very, very little. So what I've done in this guide, and you can just quickly pause here if you want to run through this. I think I've kind of covered most of this. I actually didn't talk about the profile. So the motivation, I did talk about the subject to one. So again, the subject to example is a seller is some combination of they recently bought the home. So like lower equity, they put less down, they bought it recently. It's not like they've owned the home for 20 years where it's maybe doubled or tripled in price, something like that. They might be moving. A lot of these people who are selling homes that they bought 3, 4 years ago, they might be going through divorce, they might be relocating, they might be doing well with the property, they might be trading up into a larger property, or they might be trading into a different asset class. These might be investors who have bought, duplexes, fix and flips. They've done all kinds of stuff. They just want to get into a different asset class. There's all kinds of buckets. The seller finance one is a little more interesting because these are typically like, if there's a pure seller finance deal, they've probably held the home for like 10, 15, 20 plus years. They've paid off all the debt. Maybe they even decided to pay extra debt down, extra interest down every single year or for a blend of years. And now, they own the home entirely in cash or almost entirely in cash. It makes sense that they would do seller financing because they're also typically pretty affluent. Like there's a main one right here. So the home is probably doing really, really well, but they're 50, 60, 70 plus years old. They're just done. They're done with real estate. They don't really need a lot of today money. Their main goal now at this stage in their life is just to keep more of their hard-earned income and not lose it to capital gains tax. So for example, if a seller bought a home, let's say 15 years ago for 300 grand and it's worth $1 million, now and they have no debt on the home, well, they're going to be taxed at 21% of 700 grand. And that's a big chunk of change. That's $150,000, $160,000 plus just to sell the home. That's their penalty. That's their tax penalty. So a lot of the times they start communicating with us and letting us know, like, this seller finance thing, I've talked to my attorney, I've talked to my CPA. They kind of told me this is the only thing I can really do if I don't want to take a $160,000 haircut in the tax bill for selling this home today. They have other options. They can explore building out a charity. They can do what's called a donor authorized fund. They can do a blend of those two and other shielding strategies. But the problem is they only learned about this approach maybe 3, 6, 12 months ago when they decided to start exploring the sale of the home. And now they learned from their CPA, their attorney, their estate advisor that they have to run this strategy for 3, 4, 5, 6 years before they could take 100% of the proceeds tax-free. So they have to kind of play this waiting game. So really their only option is to sell or finance the home, maybe take 10, 15% down. They'll still pay a little bit of capital gains tax on the proceeds that they collect today, but the remainder monthly payments and then the stuff that they take, as a 5, 6, 7, 10-year balloon payment later on, they can kind of avoid some of those capital gains tax. So I guess just to recap, again, your motivation, all these are insanely favorable to the buyer. This is literally why we have this program. This is why we have product market fit. This is why we have clients like you enrolling with us, doing, this low ticket program or a super high ticket program, whichever it is, however you're watching this video. It's just, we win big on the terms. And that is the most important thing when starting your short-term rental portfolio and then looking at scaling it. Because your motivation might just to be as de-risked as possible and just put as little money into the deal with the lowest monthly payments so that you have this slush fund, which you probably won't need if you're working with us because you're getting the right market, the best property deal type, or the best property type and then deal type in that market. And then number 3, you're nailing the design. So a lot of people think, I need to have this slush fund in case of a rainy day or if the property is cash flowing negative. So what's cool about this approach is you can satisfy that desire to protect your downside if there ever is a negative month or an extended set of negative months. But in reality, you just wiped your down payment and your closing costs by 60, 70% going this route, sometimes even higher. And what it allows you to do is, again, you're still getting better cash flow because you're buying these on way better terms while interest rates are super high. Plus, you're just stretching your dollar further. So somebody like me, I would stretch my dollar further to buy more real estate. Somebody who's on the other end of the spectrum where they're like, I love buying real estate, but I'd like to de-risk as much as possible. De-risking means, hey, instead of, wiring $190,000 to close on a $60,000 home, $600,000 home or something like that, they might say, we can do this down payment for 80 grand and closing costs all in, something that is very typical for a lot of our clients. And all that extra 100, 110,000 that is left over, I just get to keep in my reserve fund for a rainy day. And then after 3, 6, 12 months of being live with the property and seeing that it's actually performing well, then I decide to do my next deal. So that was this is almost 30 minutes in length. That was basically a breakdown of everything to do with the Proformas. So just reading the mechanics of them, kind of understanding how everything is formatted, where everything is, what it looks like, and how to read it. And the final version of that was just basically me running through all the stuff that I've drawn out and shared in other videos. So really hope this helps. By now, you probably watched the onboarding video. You've watched this deal portal video. If you haven't already watched the tax guide, check that out. I put together a very extensive market breakdown, which I think is really cool. I put together this matrix of kind of determining, what's the most ideal market for you. Spoiler alert, if a property is going to cash flow, it's probably a good market for you to get into, so long as you're good with everything else about the mechanics of the deal. A better deal will trump a best market, right? So I do better deals in inferior markets. There's only one best market. No one knows what it is because there's all kinds of trade-offs. If there were one best market, everybody would only be doing deals there every single year, and then it would no longer be the best market because it's oversaturated. So hope you like this one, and then just keep checking out the content. And again, if you're getting to the stage where you want more one-on-one support and just want us as a company to do all the hand holding, from the process of finding one of these deals and then all the rest of the stuff, going under contract, taking all the legwork out of the closing process, the handoff process to a co-hosting company, finding the right co-host, which is a lot of legwork, and then also the right CPA, introducing you to the right person who's going to help you maximize the tax benefits, and keep everything turnkey for you. Again, that co-host is going to be huge. Just schedule a quick call with me and we'll walk you through whatever the next steps are. Otherwise, just continue enjoying this content.